This meeting is being
For those of you who have joined for the Society of Cost Engineer webinar, we'll start 1 minute after the top of the hour to allow latecomers to join, but you're at the right place. So welcome. It is exactly top of the hour. We'll wait 1 more minute. I'm Gary Kokens. I'll be the moderator for some of the latecomers. We'll start in probably 45 seconds. You're in the right place. Okay, it's 1 minute after top of the hour. Let's get going. My name is Gary Kokens. I'll be the moderator and have been the moderator for the Society of Cost Engineer webinars. First, regarding the Society of Cost Engineers, I encourage you to go to its website. You may have to write this down, have a pencil and paper ready. It's www.societyofcostengineers, no space, no punctuation.com. Membership is free. This webinar will be posted on there probably within the next 48 hours, perhaps less. So let me do some introductions here. The title of the talk is Mastering Should Cost Estimation for Successful Project Management. I'm going to read a little description of what this presentation will be by Dan Kennedy. I'll give Dan's bio in just a second. It will delve into the world of should cost estimation and discover its pivotal role in shaping successful project outcomes. As stakeholders, from project managers to strategic leaders, gain insights into the art and science of cost estimation and its invaluable contributions to effective project planning and execution. We're having some technical problems regarding questions at the end. My suggestion is write down Dan's email address. You should see it on that slide and directly send any questions to him. There was a few people did send questions in advance. I have those. If there's time at the end, I'll ask them. So Dan Kennedy, who is he? Dan has 30 years of experience in the manufacturing industry. He is currently a tech fellow for the SEER, those are capital letters, for manufacturing suite of estimating tools in the Estimating Services Group at Galorath Incorporated. The engineering services organization offers cost estimating, strategy, and engineering consulting services to the Galorath clients at the campaign, proposal, and procurement phases of a product life cycle. So Dan, the ball's in your court. Take over.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. Hi, folks. I'm Dan Kennedy, as I say, from Galorath. got more years behind me than in front of me, and in the professional world. So, what I'd like to talk to you a bit about today is it should got us estimating why you should do it. I'm gonna stand mostly on the philosophical side of this thing. I'm not gonna go be hawking you my software, although it's good. There's a lot of good software out there. So choose what works for you. And my suggestion is you do rigorous should cost estimating. Um, why? Well, budgetary. That's huge in business. Most everybody here has got a job. Everybody here is working for somebody. Everybody here needs their company to make a profit. Um, there's a lot of people to please, from the accountants to the CFOs to the customers. Um, uh, you need to understand the should cost, and you need to understand what things are worth, so that you can do the right budgetary work. Decision making. As you look at an opportunity, be it to buy something or to sell something, um, you've got to decide what the risks are and what the value is, and whether you've got enough money for it, or many other things. But decision making, as generally applies, is in an organization, somebody is going to have to commit to a project. Somebody is going to have to make a decision about how they're going to deploy and implement and execute on a project. Typically, those are upper management. They need to know how much things are going to cost. They need to know how long it's going to take. All the things that program managers worry about. One of those things that is important is risk management. If you're going to be sticking your neck out and committing company money, or your own money for that matter, there's always some risk on those things. And so a good cost estimate will help you quantify those risks, help you identify those risks, and help you mitigate those risks. Anybody that's in program management knows the three ways of doing it. You either accept it or you mitigate it. And so identifying the risks that are associated with your project are important, and they can come right out of a cost estimate. Um, the last of those things is going to be communication. Um, if you are embarking on a project, communication is huge. There's a lot of different stakeholders associated with it, besides the accountants, besides the managers, besides the customers. You might have suppliers, and conveying those expectations to them about what you expect to pay, how long you think it's going to take, what it needs to be, is vital. And having crisp communications, clear communications of those expectations is an outcome of this cost estimating. It's not just finding a dollar value or a point estimate for how much a widget's going to cost you. You may have to go out and buy it, which means you have to talk to your suppliers. You may build it internally, which means you need to talk to the people on the shop floor. And you need to be able to convey it to upper management, tell them how much it's going to cost and how much they can expect to make on this project. Um, there's a number of different styles that I have come across in my time, and we've kind of categorized them in a couple of different ways. The first of which is heuristic. Um, it's it's um, it's typically some expert in the field that knows exactly how much this stuff's going to cost. Generally, it's the cheapest way to go. You ask somebody's opinion, cost $10, sell it for $10. Generally, a little effort, quick. Nobody has to work too hard to get that estimate. It's generally not too complex, and there's not very many details in it. It's cheap and easy, but it comes with often unknown risks. If you haven't studied the problem, if you haven't done your due diligence, you're likely to get bitten. You're likely to lose the job. There's a lot of things can go bad if you don't do your due diligence and look at this opportunity scientifically. Analysis estimating is probably one of the more common that I've seen. It generally comes off your history. If your company has been making products like this, or selling products like this, or working with this customer before, you generally have some history of what those parts or what those things are going to be worth that you're selling. Um, how did we make money on it last time we made it? Oftentimes, that is handled by senior management in an organization. They'll corral the accountants and the other people that are involved and say, hey, we've got this opportunity. It looks like this part. It looks like what we did last year or 10 years ago, or, or at some point you've got some history that says it ought to be like this. That's an analogy. It's cheap, but it's got different risks. You don't know if your customer is willing to pay for that again at that price, or if somebody's going to come in and undercut you. So if you don't do a rigorous look at at what you're trying to offer, you may not win the job, or you may lose money on the job. You don't know. Um, Bottom up estimating. This one is one that I've spent a lot of time being involved in, particularly in the aerospace. An opportunity will come across. The sales guy takes an RFQ. He sends out a huge engineering data package. Um, you need a bunch of subject matter experts. It takes a lot of time, but the good thing is you get typically get good planning out of it, assuming that people do it properly. Um, you get a lot of information from many places. The accountants are going to participate. The shop floor is going to participate. Your suppliers are going to participate. But all these plans need to be organized and then create a bid package to go. Um, I've seen other people that try to work in their own estimating tools. They'll build elaborate Excel spreadsheets. They'll look for metrics and similarities that they can draw on to help with this bottoms up estimating. It's quite good, but it is quite costly for organizations to execute, particularly with their more experienced people who've seen these things before and who have better understanding of things. The last one is going to be this parametric, detailed data driven estimating. This is kind of where my company comes in, and many others, as I said. They use specialized tools. Somebody has already put the mathematicians on it, looked at a great deal of data, made a great many calculations, and generally put it into a package that is easy to use, that is um, straightforward. It'll often give you good outputs for communications, and it checks all the boxes on those things. It's a lot less effort than the homegrown detailed estimates, where all your subject matter experts have had assignments to try and create these metrics that you can use later. And oftentimes they'll use data from a lot of outside sources. They'll be looking at industry data that they have access to. Um, they'll create you reports that are easily understood and communicated. And they allow you to do what ifs. They allow you to do trade studies. Do I build it internally? Do I buy it externally? Um, make it out of different materials. They allow you to run trades. Yeah, to go back and reiterate some of those things in heuristic estimating. Someone knows the right price. Maybe he has got a long relationship with the buyer, and his buddy told him what they're willing to pay. Um, Looks like something someone else did. I mean, the U.S. government goes ahead and publishes all kinds of data on what they paid last time for when they go out for procurement. Or maybe he's just knows it just feels right. This is what this part ought to cost. This is what we ought to charge. We can make money at this. Again, it doesn't take much effort. Put a price in the customer's hand, but if you don't look at it thoroughly, you may miss something critically important in what your offering is. The delivery, some special features, um, some special materials that you might have missed. You might underprice the job, and in that case, your company will lose money, and you may go out of business if you do it too big a job, or you may leave money on the table. Um, it, the markets may have changed. Things may have gotten better in terms of pricing. Currently, right now, we're looking at inflation. If you charge the same thing you charged last year, you may not be making enough money. Um, and you never know. Maybe this buyer that's your sales guy's buddy is trying to save his company money. Maybe they overextended. They need to economize somewhere, and they think that you could afford to help his company out. Importantly, that you may not win the opportunity if you don't put in a responsive uh, estimate or responsive quote to these people. They may deem you unresponsive and not even consider your offer. Uh, Going back on this analogous estimating, going back over this again, the accountants typically do this. They look at the past work and estimate the price. Maybe they'll put some inflation on there, maybe they won't. You look at other contracts and let the estimates and estimate the price on these things. And this is often something that's done by senior management, the people that have financial responsibilities for the organization. They'll often be doing it this way. We've done it this way before. The customer expecting this price will negotiate 5% more, whatever they do. Um, but they don't take a thorough look at what the real cost of the part might be. They just trust in steering by the wake, they call it. It's less risky than heuristics, certainly. You do have some data to support the fact that you may be able to make money at this. It's fairly quick and it's fairly low effort. And there may be some robust information. You may have shop paperwork, you may have manufacturing planning, you may have historical data on how many people need to get involved with this thing and for how long. Um, but the disadvantage is it's not a robust review of the requirements. There may be some things inside the requirements that are different than what you've done in the past, and you may end up making a non-compliant offer, non-responsive. Um, you get a price that reflects on how you've done it before. Sometimes that's called steering by the wake, um, and it can be effective. It's probably one of the more um, used estimating techniques out in industry today. We built stuff like this before. It costs this much per pound, or it costs this much, and so this is what we're going to charge for this. But if you're not looking at new information, if you're not using um, industry tools that are out there, you may not realize that technology has changed. Maybe they're going to be additively manufactured this time. The advent of 5-axis CNC machines made a big difference on how much machine parts cost. There's just a lot of things that if you're not keeping fresh, if you're depending on your past history for your future pricing, it could offer you quite a bit of risk. Um, Bottom up estimating. We've talked about this before. This is where the RFQ comes in. The sales guy ships out a big package of information to all his subject matter experts, typically the managers or the leads or some people who have a lot of experience in doing the things that need to be done, um, and tells them, okay, we need to respond for this in 2 weeks. So I need your inputs by next week. And everybody's busy. Everybody looks around. Everybody kind of gives it short shrift. They'll go in and they'll cobble some things together. They'll try to do the best they can to look at the data in the time they have available. It's really good because the people who are responsible for fulfilling their parts of the contract um, will often give you robust details of the requirements and effort, um, and what it's going to take to deliver to that. They'll identify cost. They may look at how much staff they have. They may look at how many people they have to feed and get work for. So it's not the greatest way to do it, but it's certainly a lot better than the heuristic or oftentimes the historical data that you've got. Um, Given the right opportunity, people can identify risk. They can say, we don't have enough people, we don't have the right equipment, we don't have enough time. And they'll boil out the different risks to your program that are there. Um, that goes in with the needs. But typically, the people that exercise this bottoms up estimating um, do a good job. You'll get an accurate proposal, and there'll be a number of artifacts to share with both the customers and the shareholders, the senior management or the people who have to approve the quote. Oftentimes, the people on the floor who are going to be expected to execute on the contract, information for the suppliers. This is how much we think this is going to cost. This is how long you have to build it. Here's what we would like you to quote on. But the disadvantage is it's time consuming. It takes the some of your better resources typically off their day-to-day work of making product and making money. Um, your operations people, clearly, your quality folks, they're going to have to look at it, look at the requirements. The people on the shop floor are going to have to look at it and see if they can actually do the tasks and we've got the right equipment. Um, Senior management is going to have to spend time uh, not only reviewing what is you've come up with, oftentimes in a disorganized fashion, and pushing in and challenging people, um, and supply chain. They need to know what they're going to have to go out and buy, whether it's raw material, whether it's finished goods that you later integrate. But it's time consuming for those people to do that kind of work on bottom up estimating. Last time I'm going to talk about is parametric estimated. That's typically uses some packages that are out there, and we offer one. There are a number of other fine offerings out there, often for specific things. A number of things come number of names come to mind, um, but they're all good. And my opinion is um, you should probably look into these if you haven't already. Um, they're typically a compilation of work done by people like what we did in the detailed estimating. Other people have done that. Other people have done that for other companies. Other people have done that in other industries. They've collected information to show that uh, what they're doing is valid. Um, and when you use these kind of tools, you can get robust details. You identify the effort. It typically doesn't take a subject matter expert to create one of these estimates, and they tend to be robust. You'll identify typically the cost elements. They'll often identify the risks associated with those things. You maybe have some uncertainty in your estimate, and those things create risk. But they're all based on the needs. They're all based on the requirements of the project, um, whether they're technical, dimensional, schedule. There's all kinds of requirements in a project that need to be identified, and the customer will typically communicate those things to you. They'll tell you what the scope of the project is going to be and what the schedule of the project needs to be. And from that, cost engineers go ahead and create um, what the cost of this thing should be. If you don't have the scope, you don't have the schedule, it's very difficult to create a cost on these things. Um, and it creates a good communication. These packages tend to reflect your thoughts on how you're going to accomplish the task that your customer has asked you to do, or in-house what your operations people have asked you to do. And it creates communication opportunities where you have quantified what your assumptions are, you've quantified what the effort is going to be, and you've got artifacts to share with your customers and the shareholders, suppliers, upper management, uh, all the other people that are in the food chain, if you will, of this estimate. It's less time consuming than doing bottom up. You don't have to have as many intelligent people. You don't have to hound them to get at your project when they've got day to day requirements to go ahead and deliver to your all the work you already have. Um, the disadvantages are it's more time consuming than a heuristic, a wild guess, or or just the historical analysis. The accountants can generally do it pretty quickly. Pull up a similar part number, put a price on it. So it takes more time than that, but it is certainly less time than doing your own bottoms up. It still takes skilled resources to review them and improve them, and you need to go ahead and invest in some of these specialized tools. In conclusion on this thing, I would say that uh, invest in these tools. They're time saving. They're they're clearly laid out. They are um, functional and have generally been tested. They'll create you with detail and robust estimates. They'll often break it down into the very fine minutia of what you're really trying to do. They'll utilize not just your information, which is what it will cost, but what you can expect to see from your competitors and what others in the industries are doing, and you can expect to know what your competitive prices are going to be. It's going to be reduce the burden on your subject matter experts, the people that really keep the wheels on your organization and keep it moving and keep things done. Keeps them from burning out, gives them time to focus on actually delivering product instead of estimating product. Um, it's a great communication tool. If you have laid out how many hours you think it takes, and you sit down and you talk to somebody and show them why you think it takes that, they'll often agree with you, and they'll often talk frankly with you on those things. And it can help you identify gaps in your offerings. If you have not done a thorough due diligence on evaluating an opportunity, then then you may have some gaps, and they may come back to hurt your company. They represent a risk. You missed something in your estimate. You overestimated something. You didn't win the work. So I'm a firm believer in these tools. Again, I work in these tools day in and day out. Um, I've got my own preference, but I would just suggest that you look into some of the tools that are available out there. I'm ready for questions if anybody has any. Gary, you're still on the line?
Yeah. Yes. Hey,
Oh,
Dan.
okay. I'm just wondering if I've been talking for the last
No,
25 minutes to
no.
nobody.
No, this is Gary, the moderator. And incidentally, I didn't introduce myself to the others. Um, I'm 74 years old, feel like I'm 44, already had a career in cost management with Deloitte, KPMG, uh, EDS, that's now part of Hewlett Packard, and then 16 years with SAS, the large analytics software vendor. If anyone wants to communicate with me, my email address is gcokins, COKINS, at GaryKokins.com. No punctuation. That's also my website. But we did have some people submitted questions in advance. So, Dan, here's the first one. Considering our rapid technological advancements and data analytics capabilities, are there emerging cost estimation methods that might soon overshadow traditional ones like bottom up or analogous estimating?
I'm not sure that they will overtake those. I think those two tools. Again, I'm an old guy like you, so I cannot imagine that there's going to be any magic easy button where it just pops out what the price of this thing ought to be. Um, there are some emerging technologies. Went to a conference here last week that are looking into artificial intelligence to go out and really data mine the whole world and help with some of the metrics that we'll be using in these estimating tools. So I can see that as being um, some emerging technology in the cost estimating world. Um, but I don't. I think that people are going to continue to use their historical data and some of these other um, cost estimating tools going
Okay.
forward.
Hey, before I do the next question, since you mentioned artificial intelligence, of course, Chat GPT is getting a lot of people's attention. There's sort of a kissing cousin to artificial intelligence. It's called robotic process automation, RPA, and also machine learning.
Hmm.
Um, but one of the threats of these tools is the elimination of jobs, where the computer replaces people who do kind of like manual work. And for those who are attending, if you want to see a very or view a very scary YouTube video, write this down. It's called Humans Need Not Apply. I'll repeat that. Humans Need Not Reply. It's got about 9 million views, and it kind of shows the impact that RPA, artificial intelligence, will have on all sorts of jobs, but especially white collar jobs, accountants, attorneys, and who do discovery work. So that's just sort of a recommendation. So here's another question, Dan. How do different cost estimation methods factor in the unpredictability of external factors, such as sudden market changes or geopolitical events? Is there a method that is best suited for high volatility environments?
Boy, I don't know that there is anything that would be almost an artificial intelligence question on this. Who could have predicted 2 years ago, when COVID hit, that prices would go through the roof and availability of products weren't going to be there? I don't think there's any estimating tool out there that foresaw that. Now there are estimating tools that will let you do, again, estimates of future costs. They'll do inflation curves and they'll do things like that. And some of them will even let you go ahead and put a range of values in there to go ahead and reflect a risk that you can later make a decision on. But at least they're quantifying those risks. They're pointing out that this is a risk, and you may want to consider this, and you may want to think about doing something different, mitigating it in some fashion. So, yeah, I don't think there's any magic crystal ball out there that'll tell you what the price of um, coffee is going to be in 4 years. It just isn't.
Hey,
No, no.
Dan and Gary, this is Jerry. We have a couple questions coming in live, so I'm going to challenge you with them if you don't mind. Well,
Okay.
first one is, can you share the accuracy of these cost estimates when using a parametric estimation?
Um, that what I would say about the accuracy is, I would say, look, there's risk associated with it. It's very difficult to really quantify the accuracy. My experience is that we are typically within 5 or 10% when I do estimates. However, those are part of the risk range that you can expect to see, whether you're doing a Monte Carlo risk, whether you're doing simple risks, those things. But an estimate by definition is an estimate, and it's always going to be wrong.
Right. And if you don't mind, I'm going to chime in just for 1 second. So accuracy implies a known answer, right?
Yes.
So your data, you're going to be as good as your data is, but that does not necessarily mean it's going to be what the supplier or whoever is going to charge you, because that is not a known. They can change their price at at their whim. It may have nothing to do with the actual cost. It just is whatever they are willing to charge you for. So accuracy is kind of a misnomer. But you're going to be as accurate as the data that you use, if you want to use the word accuracy. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I agree. And by definition, somebody's going to be out there willing to sell it for less or charging more, and they may need to work more than you do. So it's a
Absolutely.
moving target.
Yeah. And you can't judge accuracy to a moving target. I guess that's the best summation I can come up with.
Yeah.
Next question is there an estimating tool that is good for estimating composite materials?
Yeah, mine. um, yeah, our tool does composites extraordinarily well. We've got a great data set to to create those things. And quite frankly, I don't know um, all of the offerings out there in composites, but I know that the one that I use every day is quite robust, gives you fine detail, and it's accurate.
Very good. I want to share just a little anecdote. My first decade was with a large manufacturing conglomerate, FMC Link-Belt. My undergraduate degree from Cornell University is industrial engineering, but I wound up being a financial division controller. I always say I'm an engineer masquerading, as an accountant. But one of the things I learned there, this was regarding accuracy, and we were involved with activity-based costing. I have quite a bit of experience with that. Actually, I've written books. I learned a phrase: it is better to be approximately correct than precisely inaccurate. In other words, it's better to be roughly right than exactly wrong. And one of the problems with the accountants community, I'm talking about the real kind of like debit credit type of accountant, is they're so preoccupied with precision that they don't really understand what's going on. Like when they create their overhead rates or their burden rates, they're worried about 5 digits to the right of the decimal point when there's mistakes 2 digits to the left of it. So, yeah, we've got to be, accountants sometimes can do more good than bad. I have another question coming up.
May I follow up for just a second on that
Oh,
point?
sure.
Yeah. Um, my philosophy, and you call it a philosophy if you will, is that cost becomes a transform function from labor, effort, hours, and materials. So if you create an estimate that accurately reflects the effort that's going to be required in doing a thing, how many man hours is associated with this, what kind of equipment, et cetera, et cetera, people are willing to speak to you about how difficult the job is going to be in terms of how long it will take. Uh, where things get muddied is when you filter it through that accounting function and you have no idea what the burden rates are, the average labor rates are, and how they wrap that all up into a cost. And my experience, businesses are fairly averse to revealing that kind of information. They don't want to tell you what their overheads and their G&As and what they're paying their people on the floor and how much profit they're making. They just don't. That's closely held information. Um, so
Yeah, but my concern is not about sharing that information with third parties like in a supply chain. It's internally. And
sure,
you mentioned overhead, and I think it's more properly referred to as indirect expense. So we contrast indirect expense with direct expense. My experience is that organizations that have diverse products and so on and so forth, they could have 50% of their expenses are direct, but the other 50% are indirect. So when the accountants, I say, they get lazy and they allocate that overhead like spreading butter across bread, and number of labor hours, machine hours, units produced, sales dollar, all that stuff. It's totally flawed and misleading. I will defend activity-based costing, and I know when I mentioned it, probably a few people listening just winced. Oh, ABC, it doesn't work. It's too complex. That's wrong. ABC can actually be implemented in 2 to 3 weeks using rapid prototyping methodologies with iterations, if anyone wants to know more about that. But why I am fond of activity-based costing is it removes the flawed and misleading information and gives managers and employee teams fact-based information. And I want people, if they want to remember anything other than, Dan, what you said, remember this: in the absence of facts, anybody's opinion is a good one. In the absence of facts, anybody's opinion is a good one, but usually the biggest opinion wins, which is the opinion of the boss of the boss of the boss. So to the degree they're making decisions on gut feel or intuition or flawed and misleading information, the organization can be at risk.
Hey, we have a couple more questions that have come in. First one is actually came in from a couple different people. Is there a place they can see demos of the different softwares, either parametric or bottoms up or whatever? My suggestion to you would be, if you're interested in looking at Galorath, feel free to give Dan a call. If you'd like to see Galorath or any of the other options, one of our partners at the Society of Cost Engineers, and maybe write this down, is called the Center for Strategic Cost Management. We can help direct you towards the right software for your particular situation. It's free to anybody. So if you would like to contact the Center for Strategic Cost Management, it's www.centerforstrategiccostmanagement.com, and we will assist you in lining up either demos and or helping you find the right solution for your particular needs. Another question is there an estimating tool that has a data library for cutting tools from each of the large manufacturers, Sandvik as an example, and life of the cutting tools associated with it? Dan, you can speak for the softwares you know, and if you want, I can kind of chime in
yeah,
if you'd like.
you might know better than that. We incorporate a lot of the data from the cutting tool manufacturers. We also make in our software, we make it open architecture so that you can load your own cutting and you can do your deterministic machining estimating. Um, I'm not aware of any giant library of speeds and feeds and cutting tools geometries other than what the manufacturers offer. And
I would agree with you. I mean, it's up to it's going to be whatever the manufacturers recommend. Most of the softwares I've seen, including Galorath's designed for manufacturing, if I'm correct, if I remember the package correctly, you can actually go in there and actually change the speeds and feeds and the number of cutting teeth. And is it carbide? Is it all the different types? So it could give you a very accurate again, it's a bad word, but a very accurate estimate of the actual time it takes to cut.
agreed.
Gary, any more questions? Any more
Those
questions in the chat?
those are the ones I've seen so
Okay,
far.
I've got one more. I've got a couple more for Dan.
Oh, sorry. There's
Uh-oh.
we have a couple more. Is there a project costing certification independent of any tool? Okay, that's a great question for the Society of Cost Engineers to work on.
Exactly.
We are actually working towards creating a actual certification for cost engineers. Look for that in the next year or so. We did host one at the University of Michigan last year. We are looking to partner with colleges and or other organizations. If your organization itself is looking for a certification, again, contact the Society of Cost Engineers and we would work with you. We do have a course prepared. It's just not up and running yet. The next question, is there a sandbox version of Galorath that we can view and experience firsthand before proposing to our organization?
I think the answer to that is yes. And if I'm not mistaken, um, our- the man who can make that happen may well be on this conference. But yeah, we will typically, if you reach out to Galorath, we'll speak to you and look at what your needs might be and try and find the appropriate tool that we offer that might help you out. And oftentimes we'll give you a trial version of that. Um, a few weeks or a month or something to go ahead. They tend to be a little bit complicated, so our encouragement is you at least get some tutoring from us on that before you just jump in and you know it's like giving whiskey and car keys to a teenage boy. You don't kind of it's a dangerous thing to do sometimes.
Okay, I have another question that was sent in prior to the webinar. Dan, in your experience, how do clients generally respond to cost estimates derived from heuristics or analogous methods? Do they prefer one method over the other due to perceived accuracy?
Yeah, so much of my experience has to do with government contracting, and it's an elaborate and tedious process in many ways. But when you propose something, for instance, to the U.S. government, depending on the size of it, they may do what they call a finding. Oftentimes, your suppliers have that obligation to the U.S. to the your customers have that obligation to the U.S. government as well. And so, a team of people will drop in on you and they will review exactly what the basis of estimates. Truth in negotiation is one of the laws that's in there. And so oftentimes if the contract's large enough, they'll come in and they'll want to know everything about how you came up with the price you delivered them. And if you've got a heuristic, that makes it really difficult. Analogous, that too makes it really difficult. They'll demand you divulge your accounting rates and factors and show all the history that you have on building this part, and you'll just be subject to an audit, and they'll really lean on you pretty hard. If you can present them with what your estimates are for in terms of how many hours and what kind of equipment and how much labor and materials go into it, it makes that conversation much easier. Um,
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that it was communicated to the attendees this would be a 45-minute session, and I think it's just a professional courtesy to end nearly on time. So some concluding remarks. I'm going to start with my concluding remark. Jerry, if you want to have yours as well, and Dan, I always like to conclude this way, and it's unrelated or it's indirectly related to this whole topic. It has to do with leadership. I believe in the past, the best executives and best leaders had the best answers. Today, I do not think that's the case. Today, I think the best leaders and best executives have the best questions. There's too much uncertainty. There's too much complexity. There's too much volatility for them to rely on their gut feel or intuition or the types of answers they had earlier in their career that got them promoted to the top. They need to create a culture of discovery and investigation. You know, that's kind of like where analytics come into play, and tolerance for making mistakes, as long as you learn from the mistakes. So that's my concluding remarks. Jerry, do you want to have some, or Dan? And Dan.
I'll let Dan. I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that were online typing responses.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Gary. I think the best asset that anybody has is the people that work for them. If you're going to sit up at the top and dictate, I think you're making a terrible mistake. I think you need to listen. I think you need to understand, and I think you need to depend on the people who are actually going to be driving 20 years from now, instead of, you know, trying to hold on to your throne. Listen to everybody. Invert the pyramid. The people that are doing the work are probably more important than you are. So listen to them.
Yeah. From the top desk to the desktop. I like to say what you just described is leaders without followers are just taking a walk in the park. So thank you, everybody. I think Jerry is responding to some of the questions today by typing in the answers. Thank you all for attending. Again, the Society of Cost Engineers, www. Society of Cost Engineers is our website, and membership is free. So I think I'm just going to say we're done. And Dan and the Galorath team, thank you very much for presenting today.
Thanks, Gary and Jerry, and the rest of you all for attending. I hope
Yep. Yeah, the one thing I would like to add, Gary and Dan, is thank you too. But thanks to all the participants. This has been a great opportunity for everybody to learn. So thank you so much.